I remember for so many years when I was writing about, the homeless, it was something like 40,000 who believed to be sleeping in city shelters at night. But it sounds like that has really gone up.
Yeah, it's gone up, and that 100,000 number is also probably an undercounting, given all of the people who are doubled up or in overcrowded apartments or just feeling housing insecure, couch surfing. So the number is probably much higher than what we even know.
What do you think? What do you think is the reason when we talk about the rent stabilized apartment, the housing under rent control, the number has gone down. But why do you think such a surge in homeless people? What do you think has contributed to that?
I think the rent has gone up, rent has just become more expensive and people can't afford to live here anymore. It's just hundreds of thousands of people have been leaving the city because they can't afford to live here over the last few years. And even more are just, they're staying here, but now they can't find a place to live.
Yeah. So tell me about your organization. What's your mission? Who belongs to it? What you do?
Yeah, so Housing Justice for All is a coalition of tenant organizations from across the state that are fighting for universal rent control, for social housing, and an end to homelessness. We knit together groups from Buffalo to Brooklyn, all coming together to pressure the state legislature to make sure that it centers tenants.
When we talk about affordable housing in the city, do we necessarily mean housing that is subsidized by the government? Is that basically what we're talking about?
It depends in different ways, and I think it's true that for a long time certain neighborhoods have blocked housing from being built. I think there's new ballot measures that were passed in this past election that could change some of that. And I think what people really want to see is that housing is actually affordable to people. And that does mean that the government needs to step in and help with some kind of funding to make it all work, whether that's rental assistance for the people who live there or it's capital money to put into building these buildings and making them affordable. And making them permanently affordable, so rent stabilized or rent regulated, so that people have that assurance that what they're getting is something that can last for a long time.
So I gather almost half of New York City residents live in rent stabilized apartments. The figure that I saw was about 1 million compared to about 1.1 million in market rate housing, and about 177,000 in the housing projects. Give me a brief primer on how stabilized housing works.
Yeah, it's around 1 million rent-stabilized apartments, so around 2.4 million people live in them. And what it means is that you have the right to renew your lease. You have certain rights to stay in your apartment if you're doing everything right and things are going okay. And the Rent Guidelines Board, which is a mayor-appointed board, decides how much or whether your rent goes up every year. And so every year they vote on rent adjustments, so whether the rent should go up 2%, 5%, 0%. And so tenants, rent-stabilized tenants, have an ability to impact that process and to weigh in and say, this is what's going on in our lives, this is what costs we have, these are the rent increases that we can afford or we can't afford. And so it gives tenants power over where they live and a sense of stability. You can pass on a rent-stabilized apartment to your family member if you need to. And so many people in New York see rent-stabilized housing, I think, as this amazing source of wealth.
There was a debate for years about mayoral control versus community control. But we've had mayoral control for a number of years now. Do you think that's better than community control? I mean, are people really debating that seriously now?
People are still debating that seriously. The statute, which is a state statute, comes up for renewal every few years. It's going to come up for renewal again this June. And what Mamdani says, which I think is the right message, is he wants mayoral control because we're one city. It's one budget. It's one collective bargaining agreement with the teachers union. We have children moving from one district to another. We need to solve these problems as a city. At the same time, we need to move appropriate powers down to the district and the school level so that educators can be making decisions instead of somebody in City Hall or even the chancellor's office. It's too varied a system to be centralized in all its decision making.
How many districts are there, school districts are there?
Well, there are 32 community districts. Those are basically responsible for schools K through 8. And then we have high school districts, and then we have some specialized districts, like something called District 75 for students with high need special education requirements.
Okay. You have said that attendance is a concern for you and that you feel there are too many school holidays.
Too many school holidays.
How many are there now?
Oh, there are a lot of school holidays. And we keep adding them, whether they're religiously based or politically based. I mean, we have Juneteenth, we have the MLK holiday, we've added 2 Eid holidays, and there are just the old-fashioned Jewish and Christian holidays that students have off for. So I think we have to wrestle with that. Students don't go to school enough and continually enough because these holidays dot the calendar, so there's hardly a couple of weeks that go by where you just have like 10 days of school. So my solution would be to increase the number of days to before Labor Day. Most American school districts, most big cities start school before Labor Day. There's no real reason that New York shouldn't be doing that, so that we can have snow days. We just had this situation where students logged on for a period of time if they did it all, but we really should let them off for regular snow days. And if we need to, we have those extra days in our pocket because we started school at, this year, Labor Day comes September 7th. That's an entire week in September when kids could have been going to school, teachers could have been setting up the year for them because it's really important to be going to school. We are enforcing chronic absentee as a system.
By having so many holidays.
Rather than just the students not coming to school, which is a separate big problem.
What are the areas where you've seen the public schools make significant progress in recent years?
One area is in multicultural curricula. There is a great series of curricula called Hidden Voices, where we represent the backgrounds of what Mayor Dinkins used to call the gorgeous mosaic of New York City. So I think we're doing well there. I think we're doing much better as somebody who teaches leadership in moving people from teaching ranks, even paraprofessional ranks, into teaching, into the principalship, and into superintendencies. So we have a really good coterie, I think, of leadership in our schools. And that's a reason that Mamdani should be moving decision-making to the school level rather than just central dictates.
There is a teacher shortage, isn't there? Or is there?
Well, I would say there's a shortage of good teachers.
Okay.
We're always working on that.
Essentially, the program is there to meet the needs of whatever generation of students are coming through the system.
Do all SEEK students get basically free tuition? Is it tuition free for all SEEK students?
Virtually, it's virtually free for many. They of course have their regular financial aid that they are eligible for, and then the SEEK funds come in and fill the gaps. So, for instance, there's a transportation stipend. Students probably wouldn't ordinarily be able to take advantage of some of the big things like study abroad that are very expensive. SEEK funds can go in there and help students make sure that they get the same opportunities that any student would have.
What qualifies you for SEEK? And how do you get in? Do you seek or does seek you?
Yes, both. Both. When students are applying to CUNY and to a senior college, often they will check off a box on their application that says that they're interested in the SEEK program. And how they know about that is usually because a counselor, and quite frankly, these days, because it started in the 60s, another family member has gone through SEEK and has attributed SEEK to their success, and they encourage the students to inquire about it. But we also, at many of the senior colleges, screen all the students that apply and look to see those who might not ordinarily be admitted just below the admission criteria or that are economically disadvantaged. And that's how we recruit the students for the next cohort.
So how many students are in a SEEK program now, and
Yeah.
how many have been through it over time?
Yeah. On average, we have about 9,000 students over the life of the program a year, 9,000 a year. So we've served well over 100,000 New Yorkers.
Over time. Does SEEK have, I believe at one time, I was telling Jay that when I got out of I was telling you that when I got out of grad school, I and a college mate applied for teaching jobs in the SEEK program. She got one, I didn't. It's turned out all right, but she was there for many years. Is there a separate faculty for SEEK, or is it?
So depending on the college, some of the colleges have faculty that are dedicated to SEEK and are run by what's called tenure track sort of faculty. These days, most of the operation is operated by management type directors. We call them higher education officers. And they are the directors at most of the units these days. And most of the staff, because they have a mental health or social work or some other background in order to be a counselor,
Yeah.
are also higher education officers. But we do have mixes where there are some that have faculty and these HEOs. We have some that are all faculty and some that are all HEOs. Really, the different colleges are able to tailor it to the population that they have, so that they make sure that they serve the students in a way that's going to help them succeed. I always like to hearken back to what Percy Sutton said. Right? He said, opportunity, access without opportunity is not truly helping anybody.
Yeah.
We make sure that when the student gets access, the opportunity is there to make sure that that particular student in that cohort, in whatever particular era we're in over the 60 years, has the right people there to make sure that they are successful.
Now, I gather one thing that is unique to the SEEK program is the students must complete a summer preparation
Bridge.
program. How long
Yes.
is that, and what do they
Yes.
do in it?
So summer bridge programs are, I just did a tour of all the colleges and I was talking with students. And so many students say, that summer bridge program, that's what set the tone for them in college. It prepares them for the first day of class. They are not a stranger to college life. They already know what's expected of them. They already know where to go and what to do. They often say they're the experts compared to some of their friends who are not in the program who started that time. But often those programs include English and math preparation for English and math college level, giving them sort of that, here's really the level of work that you need to be able to do, because they do the same work everybody else does. But at the same time, their counselors and their peers are there to say, we're here to support you because we know you can do it.
Yeah.
And that program does a lot of that.
To your point, it was the SEEK program that pioneered pre-freshman summer skills program in this country.
Okay.
It started with SEEK.
Okay. How do you speed up buses in New York City where there's so much traffic?
It's hard. The bus in the city has never been fast. If you go back before the streets were clogged with cars and trucks, they were clogged with people and animals. But right now, compared to that old city, New Yorkers live spread out, right? To find affordable housing, people have moved to and even beyond the city limits. People are commuting 20 miles to do essential work in our hospitals, in our schools, and elsewhere. We owe people the dignity of a commute they can afford. We owe people much faster bus service. And so that requires getting cars out of the way. It requires prioritizing the movement of people and goods over the movement of vehicles, which has been the approach for several decades. And so in some places that will mean taking over part of the street. It may mean eliminating parking, but it means creating priority lanes for buses, for trucks, for emergency vehicles that help put public transit first on our streets. And there, those are bus lanes and busways. There's different names.
What's the difference between a bus lane and a busway?
So in a bus lane, it's part of the street. In a busway, it's the whole street. Although, ironically, on a busway, you can drive wherever you want on the street. You just have to make the next turn. And so people are able to do pickup and drop off, loading and unloading, but not to travel down the street as through traffic unless you're a truck or a bus or an ambulance or fire truck.
So what's an example of a busway?
14th Street is the best known busway we have in the city. It's also the one that works the best. It grew out of the threat of a shutdown of the L train. It turned out there was only the miniature L train slowdown, but the city and state have progressed so far on the plan for a busway that they put it in anyway, and it's been hugely successful. Bus speeds are up by 1/3, ridership is up by 1/3, crashes are down by 2/3. The busway has made the street work dramatically better.
You talked about, crashes are down. One thing that I notice, really as a bus rider, is what good drivers the bus drivers are. Because I look at all of the bikes and the scooters that are weaving in and out, and the pedestrians who were jaywalking, and it's a surprise to me that there are not more bus accidents and more people killed and more car crashes. I'm just amazed.
We have an incredibly professional force of bus operators. And it's to their credit, right, that the streets are as safe as they are, right? We can do better, right? But New York streets have become a lot safer, and part of that is professional drivers, having an excellent safety record.
What are the bus drivers' main complaint? Just the traffic, all of this craziness on the street?
It's a hard job, right? I mean, they're interfacing directly with the public. A lot of the time, the public is not happy with the quality of the service or even the fact that there's a fare. And so they do customer relations as they're also navigating, incredibly crowded streets.
So bus fare beating has been an issue. They're more, I see people hopping over the lanes in the train. I saw one guy who must have been in his 40s who hopped up there and got stuck. but you
Poor guy.
And also you see a lot of people. I see a lot of young people, and not just young people. Just sneaking onto the buses. What, if anything, can you do about that?
So there's various estimates of bus fare evasion, and it's hard to pin down exactly right because some people might have paid for the subway or be going to pay for the subway and just don't tap into the bus. But that said, the estimate is that bus fare evasion is several times what it is in the subway, and there may be some reasons for that. Bus riders have lower incomes than subway riders. Bus service is slower than the subway. It's less effective of a service. In most places, the bus actually costs less. Here it costs the same as a subway ride. And there have been periods of time when the bus was free, right? There was obviously the free bus pilot, but there was also a free bus system for several months during 2020, during COVID. And there are routinely times when bus drivers, bus operators will wave people onto the bus for one reason or another. And so people, may be getting mixed signals. But that said, that's all of those are reasons, to my mind, that we have a different approach to that on the bus than the subway. And so the MTA is considering, what sort of fare enforcement options there are out there for the bus. But obviously out of City Hall, we're seeing a different notion, which is free buses.
Yeah.
And so free buses are compelling for various reasons. One of them is that considering the difficulties collecting the bus fare, the revenue replacing the fare would be a lot more reliable. It would be a lot more progressive. It would be something the bus system could count on. And it would also help draw in, enthusiasm about the bus to support making it faster.
I live on West 70th Street, and recently I heard about some incidents that occurred. I guess there was a couple of guys, thieves, who were working the area who jumped a couple of women walking along 70th Street, along 72nd Street, jumped an elderly man who was right in front of our building. Fortunately, the police were able to catch up to them. Another woman was harassed on her way to our building by a man who appeared to be not necessarily out to rob, but more drunk and, unruly. And I thought about that, and it makes you a little concerned for your safety, and I had never been concerned for my safety before. But then I asked the question, if New York City had 5,000 more police officers on the force, would that have prevented those actions from happening? And I don't know that it would have. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, so it's complicated to sort through this. So first of all, when we imagine like the police as the solution to something, the first thing we should be asking ourselves is there really clear evidence that an increase of policing will make some substantial difference in this issue? I mean, we already have a massive police force.
How many?
Well, around 35,000 officers. It's one of the highest numbers per capita in the country of officers. So we have a massive police presence. And I'll just add, there's like an additional 30-something police departments that operate in New York City, from the postal police to the FBI to the MTA police. So the actual number of police is significantly higher than that. And we find that, mostly police have very little to do with serious crime. They mostly manage low-level disorder, disputes, noise complaints. The estimates are only about 5% of what police do has anything to do with what we consider serious crime. The other question we got to ask ourselves is, what are the costs of handing these problems over to the police to manage? There's the obvious financial costs, which are huge, billions of dollars. I mean, police contracts were a major contributor to the city's fiscal crisis in the 1970s, for instance. But also, this enactment of policing also has negative physical and mental costs for the populations that are policed. We know that heavily policed communities have lower educational attainment rates, higher levels of mental health problems, higher levels of stress disorders, feel politically disassociated from society. So there are real costs that we have to balance in this equation. And the third is we have to think about, is there really no other way we could begin to address some of these problems? We know, for instance, that a huge amount of property crime is driven by the need to get money to buy drugs. Estimates are over half of property crime. If we had a real system for managing our drug crisis that wasn't just rooted in chasing after people and playing whack-a-mole and putting millions of people in prison for their drug problems, we could actually substantially reduce the amount of property crime in our society. Instead of chasing after people after they've already caused harm in hopes of putting them in prison, which they invariably get out of without any of their problems solved, and we put them right back in the same situation, and then we're surprised when they reoffend.
What might you do instead? I mean,
Yeah, so we could look at examples around the world of drug decriminalization, drug legalization, and dramatic expansions in drug treatment. So for instance, in the UK, there were periods, and there's a little bit of this now, where for folks who were addicted to opioids, heroin, pills, et cetera, they could see a doctor and they could receive from a pharmacy a medically approved supply of drugs that would allow them to maintain their situation without spreading spreading diseases through sharing needles, without overdoses, but also without the need to steal money every day to
Yeah.
pay for their illegal drug supply.
yeah. To learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on Instagram at 1-to-1 CUNY TV, and you can watch the show on the go by downloading the CUNY TV app. For 1-to-1 and CUNY TV, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.